hippie movement, a countercultural movement in 1960s and 70s that really shook the world, started in the United States and went all over the world. Basically, this was a movement of the middle-class white men and women who were sick and tired of the mores of the materialism, capitalism, and war. It started as an anti-war movement, and it was known for its very free lifestyle, easygoing people, men and women, a lot of music, drugs, and rock and roll, fueled by singers like Bob Dylan and Beatles, and then later on Bob Marley also joined the bandwagon as some of the torch bearers of this nonviolent movement, which has a background of the American war in Vietnam, which pretty much started in 1955 to 1975. But in 1960s, the casualties, both on the Vietnam and on American life, were huge. So people in America, and then later on in Europe, in France and Germany and other parts, they went on to this movement, which was, to an extent, it was anti-religion or more aligned towards the Eastern religion of Buddhism and Hinduism. And people flocked all over the world from America to Europe, and from there they went on to the Middle East, to Turkey, to India and Pakistan and Afghanistan. Today, I have my guest who was here with me last week, and it is Gabriela Musbauer, who is a German citizen originally, but lived in London and traveled all over the world and in America. Gabriela was the center of this hippie movement, and we thought, following on from a last program, that we should continue this conversation. So very warm welcome to you, Gabriela.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Yes. I must say that your last program with me, it really went up in the YouTube and different social media, and there was a lot of good feedback. And I thought, as I said before, that probably in order to capture a particular life span that you had as a hippie, let me say, which a hippie movement. So please tell us about that.
Yeah, I was in the middle of it. I enjoyed the freedom that we had from the status quo lifestyle. We just gotten out of jobs back then. You know, my friends, I always had a little job by the side, but many of my friends didn't have jobs. That was not such a good thing, but we just refused to go in the hamster wheel, you know, and without thinking, being like in a straitjacket, being like made to do things, to live from the outside in instead of from the inside out. You know, you didn't live your own life, it was programmed already. So it was to break free from that was something that, my friends and I did. And we just were very much swept away with a lot of things that came over from America, which means a lot of negative and good things. Good things, the music, you know, the freedom, just the liberation of being yourself and all that. But the negative things, a lot of cults that came across the pond also, that swept us away in the wrong direction. And I hope it's a warning for the generation today.
Wow. I mean, the hippie movement was also associated with communal living.
Yes.
Or and then a special, very loose, unconventional dresses, long hair, and drugs like marijuana, LSD, and music, guitar, and basically going away from the chores of the world.
Yes.
So how did people live on? I mean, what were their source of income? What did they do?
To be honest, they just had little jobs at times and then gotten in and out of jobs, or they lived off the government, or they lived off their parents, which wasn't a good idea, but that's how it worked, you know. And they were big art shows that they could display their own creations, you know. And many had also bands and did live music and earned a little money like that. I knew a pianist, he just earned his money in hotels playing piano all the time. Just jobs where you were not in a straitjacket from 8 to 5, you know. And it was incredible. Can I just share how I...
I want to know actually how you started.
When I think about it today, it was amazing that nothing happened to me because I had those long hair and round glasses like Janis Joplin, you know. I was walking around barefoot. In the city, there was glass all over the place. Now, I was too proud to wear my glasses. I took them off. I didn't even know where I was walking. Anyway, many of my friends were actually staying in tents back then, you know, because they couldn't pay the rent. And then they came to me in the winter, or they took another apartment in the winter. So that was a very interesting lifestyle. We were very much together all the time. You didn't have another thing that is what was normal back then, to make appointments all the time, you know. We didn't have to make appointments. You could just come with your sleeping bag and you were just welcome. It's wonderful.
Welcome in the community.
Yeah, the community, yeah.
So how old were you the first time you knew about this movement, and where were you at the time?
Actually, I was just stopping my nurse. I started a big nursing, and then I wanted to go to Heidelberg to be a teacher. I did evening classes to get a higher degree to do that, but it was stopped, you know, because there wasn't enough participants. So I was actually, how old was I? I was like 17 back then, 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was caught up in a lot of things. I could tell you a lot. I was fascinated by the music, and because I could express my own emotions and heart through it, like Cat Stevens, Tears on the Fire Cat, the record, Father and Son, expresses, I think, the dilemma between the generations back then. You know, in a low voice, he sings the father's part, settle down, look at me, I'm happy. And he sings with the high voice, the son's part. I loved this song. From the moment I could talk, I was ordered to listen. It's always the same story. If I want to express myself, you know, they turn away. And there was a real pain in the people back then. I felt misunderstood from the older generation, you know. There was a detachment, and I think that made it easy for them to just run away and live together like this. It's sad, you know?
So there was I could see that you were very emotive, and it's very deep for you at the minute. So it appeared at that time, the post-World War II, the devastation of that on the entire world and Europe especially, and you mentioned personally as well. And then the Vietnam War, which lasted for a very long time, and well over around 50,000 American souls, unfortunately, got killed. And then millions of people in South Asia, especially in Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, because it went on. So I think there was some kind of guilt trip on the white middle class in America and Europe, that what's going on in the world and the American imperialism. And this movement then came at the back of it, and basically divorcing from whatever is happening to the world and to materialism and to the corporate world and all that. So who introduced you to these movements? How did, because that's very interesting. You were in Heidelberg, this movement started in America.
Yeah, actually, somebody who also stopped the nurses' training, she introduced me to all the hippies. So overnight, I had all those friends.
Okay.
It happened overnight. I thought, wow, those are unusual people, you know. And I liked the music and I liked everything. And I want to just say with Jimi Hendrix also, he was a big figure back then in Woodstock. He played the American anthem. You know, it goes away from your question a little bit, if that's okay. But he had this over-amplified guitar, you know, and he put the sounds in like falling bombs in that, you know. It's just a hypocrisy. People want to be free from anything that's hypocrisy, and that's anything that's not real. They want to be authentic. And that longing, I think, was in the souls of many, many young people back then.
Yeah.
So that's how I got introduced to somebody who also stopped the nurses training back then. Yeah.
And this particular group was basically the Germans in Heidelberg and surrounds. So the movement had already set in Germany.
Yeah, it did.
So
it did.
I know in Germany and France it was really taken very warmly, and I think that must have the devastation of the war as well.
Yeah, I mean, you had this heaviness at home because the parents were still under that oppression, under the memory, very strong, and very much, traumatized still. And you wanted to not be under that. So there's another reason why young people ran away and broke free, because of that depression, of that heaviness, to be lighthearted and say, wait a minute, we have a life too, without the past. To detach yourself from that, that was,
It appears that at the same time, majority of these people, if not all, they were really going away from a very traditional Christian faith or religion.
Yes.
And I think that was also the time from 1950s onward, according to a BBC report, about 216,000 child sexual abuse were reported by the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And in some estimate, about 4% of the priests were actually there were allegation of sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
So I think that also probably played a part. So the people of that generation, hippies, they did not want to be associated much with the Christian religion, and that's why they were trying to find an answer to life and to spirituality in Eastern religion. Was that so?
Definitely. I had a lot of friends that actually pilgrimed to Oregon, Portland, Oregon, to Guru Maharaji back then, and did all the ecstatic things, and they just want to break out of this religious straitjacket there, and hypocrisy. Yes, you're right. And the Children of God was a big cult back then. I got almost sucked into that. And the Krishnas were very present in the street, non-stop with their drums and everything. Yeah.
Hare Rama, Hare Krishna.
Oh, yeah, non-stop, And then, Harrison wrote that song, My Sweet Lord. And you're totally right. We wanted to nothing to do with institutionalized religion that was double standards and were not convincing and were not sincere. So definitely there was a big search for something sincere and real. Yeah.
Did you travel to Europe with the groups or to Asia?
No, I never did. Back then, I was just in my hometown. I didn't travel, but I had friends. Back then, you hitchhiked. I don't think the generation today would be too dangerous.
Yes.
We hitchhiked all over the place. My friends hitchhiked through all of South America, paying not one penny.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they did a lot of the traveling. I personally, no, I was just happy with my group in Germany there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did you go to any other European countries at that time, like France and Netherlands? They were quite big in the hippie movement.
Not really. I just visited my boyfriend. He was from Belgium, as we talked last time. It was easy to not travel there anymore because of the hostility, So no, really, I was just in Heidelberg. I loved Heidelberg. It was full of Americans back then. They had barbecues and there was the guitarists all over the place. There was a lot of life. There was a lot of joyful, upbeat atmosphere. Yeah,
you mentioned that all the German girls wanted to marry the Yankees, or and have this American dream. Yeah. So what happened to your love life at the time?
Well, I had a boyfriend from Belgium. We were together 5 years. Now, he was a businessman already, an architect. He was on TV. He was a big shot already. I was a hippie. I was 7 years younger. And I had no clue of why he wanted to marry straight away. I said, wait a minute, I want to live my life first, So I didn't marry him, but he was a wonderful person. That was my love life,
Okay.
So
what happened to you, your travel to America? Because as a part of that, a lot of people actually focus on going to America at that time. So did you feel like going there or not, or you continued?
Not really. I was not really in touch with 91. I traveled the first time there and I caught fire then, but that goes out of our time frame now, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. So before that, no, I just was fascinated by by Martin Luther King and by things that I heard over there, you know, and the Woodstock, we watched the movie for sure, you know, and all that.
Yes.
And just felt attached to America through the media and through all the singers that came. We pilgrimed to Melanie. She was one of the old singers, came actually out of Clearwater, where I'm going all the time. And we pilgrimed all over the place where Americans were present and where there was something happening. But I did not go to America at that point.
So just tell me, I'm more interested in knowing about in 60s and 70s in particular, and because that was a very, very strange era, basically, because the world had just come out of losing 60 million people, about 8-9 million Germans. And then soon after there was a Korean War, and then the Vietnam War, and baby boomers' time.
Yeah.
And what was life like in the hippie life, you know, in 60s and 70s?
In which respect do you mean?
How did they live? You said they lived in a community.
Yeah.
And what was like a day-to-day life?
Oh, day-to-day life was very easy to explain. The day ended in the morning at 5 p.m. a.m.
Okay.
We were always together. We always played guitar. My friends took the drugs, as I mentioned in the other program. I never did. I just enjoyed the people, very intellectual people, very intelligent people, lots of artists and unusual people. And I thought, this is wonderful. This is great. They're all, you know. So we were together non-stop, basically. Big family. Was wonderful.
And when you say we, how big the group was?
Yeah, the group was like, we were always like 15 people, 10 people, 15 people. And we would do everything together, you know. Yeah.
They're living in a tent or some outside the cities or
they lived in
parks,
tents and apartments. And oh, I have to share this. This is really good. So I was born 53, so I was 17 you know, when in the 70s, right?
Yes,
so for me, it was more the 70s when I got really into things. I was checking out a castle. People lived on a castle, believe it or not, without electricity, with candles. If they had to cook, they had to actually use an oven and almost suffocated from all the fumes, you know, and the and if they would take a bath, they also had to heat up the oven. And they had big what's it called, tables, but what are they called, the really long ones. And they would sit there and we would eat together, and actually the person who rented out the castle would come too. An elderly man, royal guy, and he would just enjoy the hippie life and take part in it. Isn't that something? Now you slept on a I was one night there, that was enough for me, you know. It was like, I tried to go to bed, like you would think you would go to bed, and it was just a sheet over a piece of wood. Oh, that's really good for your back, they said, you know. And they tried their own plants, they had their own chicken, and that was not for me. I went back to my apartment very quickly, you know. But some people lived like this, some of my friends, if you talk about living, they stayed like this and homeschooled their kids, or they didn't have any school. So they lived a long time in this castle. Yeah. So
it's a very Spartan life, basically. They had very minimalistic.
Yes, minimalistic.
And as you mentioned, that most of them, or some of them, were very intelligent and educated people. And do you think it has got something to do with the drugs that people were taking, and that continued that kind of euphoria, or was there a genuine movement of disenchantment from the world of riches, so to say?
I think it was a real conscious decision first, and then the psychedelic drugs and the music, you know, was psychedelic music that can get you into a state of whatever, switching off, you know, don't even need drugs. Like today, they have the, you know, the techno music. There's the same, it's very similar, you know, just to switch off from reality. I think people made a very conscious decision, and then the drugs came after that.
Very interesting, very interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we will actually continue this program. We'll take a short break now, and then after that we will ask Gabriela that what was being singer look like to her at the time, because there's another part of Gabriela's life that she has to show some light to our audience and viewers. So thank you very much, Gabriela. So welcome back to the part 2 of my program with Gabriela, and we had some wonderful conversation about the hippie movements, which gave way to Yippie movement, which is basically the Youth International Party, again started in the United States, and this time the hippie movement morphed into more kind of a professional network who were anti-war, pro-environment, and more vegetarian. And they were influenced by Martin Luther King and many other pacifists of the time. So coming back to Gabriela again, so Gabriela was a singer at some point in her life, and she has actually been singing solo and was influenced by a number of bands of great prestige of the time. So Gabriela, again, so just tell us about your musical career, so to say.
Well, to be honest, it was not like a career that made a lot of waves, but I was very influenced from John Baez, definitely. Did some folk songs back then, just the guitar and the voice, grassroots, without all the studio equipment. And then later in the 90s, I did proper recordings in the studio, more of a rock pop nature. And for sure, I got influenced, like ABBA. I loved ABBA back then, in the 80s, wasn't it? ABBA,
yeah, very positive music.
Yeah, very positive. Yeah. And I think all my music is all very, very different, from heavy-duty rock to pop and folk. Yeah. So, yeah, I was influenced definitely, but my life took a turn. We talk about that another time in the 90s, and then this music came out of that turn in my life. Yeah.
And obviously you had time with the hippie movement, and that probably, as you were telling me earlier, that left a lasting impact and effects on you.
Oh yeah, I was always with my guitar on the road, definitely. And wherever I went, I had to sing. We just sang the old John Baez songs and Bob Dylan songs. And the guitar and me was like, we were melted together, in that time. Yeah, definitely. And I was always very shy. I always had to say, please, now do it, finally again, Was not very confident. But then later in life, we did open air concerts, and then television, and put some theater around the songs to make it more very unique, all my own songs, and I very much enjoyed that time when I was more like this.
I know I'm reverting to the earlier topic. So this hippie life, as you said, that you kind of enjoyed your little communal group of 10, 15 people.
Yes, I did.
Where you would play guitar and music and all that. And just tell a little bit more about that period.
Yeah, so just to go through a day of a hippie, let's call it like that, was very unusual. We were up till late in the night. So let's say the doorbell rings, or it knocks on the door, and here come suddenly 2 friends, 3 friends. Suddenly we attend together. We would eat together, no television at the time, and just sing together. We had one friend, he was knitting, believe it or not. He was knitting, a guy, knitting scarves, And then we had a French guy, he was painting. So this is very funny now. I got all these wonderful things given for, when you marry one time in Germany, you get your linen and all your things already given by your parents. So I took those linens and made big picture frames out of it. My mother always wondered, where did it all go? And so I was painting at the time also, tried to copy it, and was all spiritual, surrealistic, things, And so we would be together, I would say, till in the morning at 4 o'clock. I always heard and then we would fall asleep wherever we were on the floor, all over the place in my apartment. And then the next day we would just hang out and talk and be together and see if there's a concert happening somewhere where we could go. Or Genesis was one of the discos, which wasn't really a disco, you know, the typical disco. But we would go there and hang out there and dance together. Then we come back in the apartment again and hang out again and talk. There was a lot to talk about. There was a lot of wonderful exchange happening, you know. And also I had friends that completely detached from normal life and actually lived in tents. In Mannheim, in my hometown, at the Neckar. We have the Rhine and the Neckar. My Germans would know if they listen. And by the Neckar, they had their tents and they lived in it. And I stayed with them a few weeks. Again, like in the castle, just a few weeks. I was always happy.
It would be mostly in summer because winter could be absolutely hard. Where would these hippies go in winter?
Well, they would take apartment again, and move all together again. And just rent something quick for the winter and then go out again.
So there were kind of two hippie phases in a year. Summer, it's a different dwelling, and winter is coming back to the more kind of a civilization.
But many of them had their apartments too. I just remember now, you know, it wasn't a lot of them who didn't have their own apartment or lived with the parents or whatever, you know, or lived with friends. They hooked up together in little communities.
So it was more like a universal fraternity where people could zoom in to each other's lives and zoom out and no kind of boundaries. And experimenting with drugs and sex and social boundaries, and
that was definitely happening. That they exchanged partners, and there was no marriage, you know, certificate, and just experimented.
Were there any
with different
children
partners.
who came out of that?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Like they were in the castle. Most of them were in the castle that I shared about.
So what happened to those parents, or especially the mothers? Because at the end they would have been left with their children. Would they still carry on into that environment?
In my particular circle, there wasn't a lot of children coming out of that. It was the ones that already had children. As I said, they went to the castle, or they lived just more of a normal life then, I think. I remember, you know. Yeah, but the sexual revolution, I saw some of that and experienced some of that and was into some of that myself. But also the drugs. I was very glad that I was more of a spectator. You know, daily life, when you talk about that, was for me to see my friends on drugs. One of my friends took 2 LSD trips one time. I will never forget that. And she was completely out of it. She was running around on the street, screaming around with her shepherd dog. And I caught her back again. And I had to actually hug her like this because she was shaking. And she heard voices. And I mean, I had terrifying experiences with my friends that took the drugs, you know, and I was there to help and assist, actually. And so I would just say also to the generation today to please keep away from it, because it will change your personality, will change your mind. I was taking one time a cookie that had opium or something in it from Amsterdam. I tried it one time. I was gone for a solid week. I didn't know who I was, where I was, nothing. People had to lead me around like a blind person. And everything after that was slowed down. My thinking, my speech, everything. I could have been stuck in that, you know? And I saw people being stuck and being in a psychological ward forever because they thought there were Indians in the mountains. They were stuck in some kind of time frame that they experienced on the drugs. Some other friends of mine killed themselves.
There's a very strong association and correlation between drug taking, cannabis, and LSD, and with the mental health issues.
Yes.
Psychosis and depression and bipolar. And a lot of people actually end up losing their lives, basically. Did you see something like that happening?
Yes, I did. And one time, that was amazing. One of our friends tried to take his life, and he was trying to hang himself, and the branch broke. And he ended up on a piece of moss, like on a pillow, with the branch around him. And he thought, I think I should live. So he made it, but some of our friends didn't make it, and so sadly we lost some of our people. Yeah.
Unfortunately, as you know, the drug scene, so to say, is plaguing the nation or nations or the world. And we have seen harrowing details and especially in the mental health units.
Yes.
It is possible that majority of the people who take drugs, nothing happens to them, but there definitely are small number or sizable number of people whose lives are absolutely affected by them, devastated. And what message would you have for the world or for these youngsters of today?
Well, you have to know, many have self-rejection and they have no value for themselves. They don't respect themselves because mainly we call it word curses in counseling. Negative was spoken out over them, so they believed it and they feel worthless. And they feel not seen, they feel there's no attention on me, like the father and son situation from Cat Stevens. So they cut themselves. I saw it in the hospital. So if they are you need to have, I have to talk about my faith for a moment. Yes. You have to have an anchor in your life. You have to have value for yourself. I found it in Jesus, I found it in Jesus. And it helped me to know who I am, and to have self-confidence and to know my life counts. I can change the world with my life, with my attitude, with my actions. I can do good in this world. And so young people need to be anchored inside. If you live from the outside in, how people treat you, on the reflection, if you live on that, there's no chance you can see yourself.
It is very difficult, the maturation factor worked on you of life, of aging process, and you gained that insight much later in life. And I'm sure that at the time, many people would have advised you or many other people and many other hippies at the time that this is not the lifestyle, the drugs are not good. But at that time, with the exuberance of youth, people did not listen to.
Yeah, and I think about my life, how I actually wasted my young years, because the attitude is today also, I do what I feel, do what you want to do, what feels good, and you don't think long term. You have no short-term goals, you have no long-term goals, you don't know where you're going. So your life is splattered all over the place with people with some fun stuff. Yeah, but you're not going anywhere. Really. Yes. And that is very, very sad. And I was thinking, my goodness, would I have understood that much earlier in my life,
I think people, whoever, especially the youngsters, if they watch your program, they will be very much not only touched, affected, and probably take some positive lesson that what life has been. Yeah. And I think you have very eloquently, you have described the effects of drug taking and that kind of lifestyle. But do you think it has something to do with the laws of family units?
Yes,
breaking down with the single parents and people going away from whatever faith they are, and the lures of the social and exciting life.
Definitely. This is and the family unit should be a place of safety, of encouragement, where you can grow and experiment, But most of the time, like in Germany, I found that this is a group where you have to almost protect yourself from, because of all the negative that gets spoken and the criticism. And so many people young people run away. I worked in Los Angeles with the runaway kids. Those are kids that some of them don't run away, they get thrown out by their parents because they're too expensive. And so they're on the beaches hanging out, just trying to huddle together. Poor kids huddle together on the street. It's heartbreaking to see. So the Dream Center I shared about last time, they had shelters for the young people, for the men, for the women with kids. Amazing. I find a lot in my life, young people feel attracted because they see I'm still useful, but I still could be their grandmother. So they can combine those two things, and I can impart a little bit what I've learned into them. But I would say find people, if you're young, that you look up to, that you want to say, this is what I want to be like. and see what's the secret behind it. Latch on to people that go somewhere, that have vision. You know, without vision we perish. We have nowhere to go. We live by the moment. That's a big danger, because by the moment there's nothing to experience. You have to take the drugs and take the stimulation to survive the moment often,
yes.
right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the ultimate goal and destiny that must be very clear earlier on.
Yeah.
And then the role modeling is very important to have some role models in your life that you could just shape your life accordingly with the personal restraints and internal controls that you develop in life. I know that we haven't talked much about your singing.
That's okay.
And we just divulged into something else and digressed into, again, the hippie life. So you are quite passionate in singing. So do you still sing?
I do in my circles. We call it worship. I lead the worship there with the guitar very often, But recordings I haven't done for a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it appears that we may have another program with you. And maybe this time you can come with your guitar.
Oh, I will come with my CD.
Right. So, Gabriela, thank you very, very much for your time. And you've been wonderful as before and as always. And I think you're doing a great job. So, the essence of these travails and the life journey of Gabriela is this, that life matures over a period of time, and it is better to get that maturity earlier on in life and stay away from all of those negative influences of life, especially when you are young, and the deleterious effect of drugs and a very free-floating lifestyle on people and human beings and the mind is very important to recognize, because if you go on taking drugs and have a very free-floating kind of a life, you are going to destroy your life, your career, your aspirations, and your dreams. So, dear viewers, I hope that you like this program, and if you did, please give us your comments and feedback, and do not forget subscribing this channel. Thank you very much once again. I am Suhail Qureshi on my program Sharp Edge from our London studios, Quews.news, and goodbye.